if I got that many notes. As you can tell, Brother Tony's traveling again this morning. I don't know exactly where he's at, but he said he wasn't going to be here, so he asked me to fill in. And so y'all just be much in prayer for us this morning. I know I'm not Brother Tony, so y'all be much in prayer for us. The title of our lesson this morning is A Man of Courage. A man of courage. True courage is regarded as one of the foremost virtues. Its source is not found in muscles of body, but in mind, conscience, and heart. Our goal in text is, let us hold fast the profession of our faith without wavering, for he is faithful that promised. Now, everybody has imagination. Some people's is more active than others. Some people's is more far-reaching than others. You see people that are just creative and can think up ideas and different things, and other people that they can implement ideas that other people thought up because their imagination is not there. But every time you think about courage, everybody's got your own opinion of what a courageous person is. I mean, you look back over your life and you say, well, was that a courageous person, or was that a courageous person, or what qualities in him made you think that he was a courageous person? And I wanted to hit you on that this morning. We're going to start a lesson here in Esther chapter 2. And if I don't pronounce all these places and names right, y'all just bear with me. Now in Shushan, the palace, there was a certain Jew whose name was Mordecai, the son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, a Benjamite, who had been carried away from Jerusalem with the captivity which had been carried away with Jehoiakim, king of Judah, who Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried away. As you see here, Mordecai had been carried away as they captured him and carried away from Jerusalem and carried into Babylon. And there he was in the land of Babylon. And he brought up Hadashah, that is Esther, the uncle's daughter, for she had neither father nor mother, and the maid was fair and beautiful, whom Mordecai, when her father and mother were dead, took for his own daughter. Now, Esther was a cousin of Mordecai. And all the king's servants, and then we're going to skip over to chapter 3, and all the king's servants that were in the king's gate bowed and revered Haman, for the king had so commanded concerning him. But Mordecai bowed not, nor did he reverence. Then the king's servants which were in the king's gate said unto Mordecai, why transgressest thou the king's commandment? Now it came to pass, when they spake daily unto him, and he hearkened not unto them, that they told Haman to see whether Mordecai's matters would stand, for he had told them that he was a Jew. And when Haman saw that Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence, then was Haman full of wrath, and he thought scorn to lay hands on Mordecai alone, for they had showed him the people of Mordecai. Wherefore Haman sought to destroy all the Jews, and were throughout the whole kingdom of Assuerus, even the people of Mordecai. Our introduction today, as Mordecai was living in a strange land and working for strange people who had led the nation into captivity, yet somehow he remained faithful to God and to his employer. Let us notice in this lesson that even the most trying of circumstances, it is possible to stay true to your convictions, even in conditions which are not favorable. Mordecai knew how to discern between that which is acceptable and that which is not acceptable, and being a subordinate to heathen leaders. Mordecai did not compromise his stand, even when he and his entire people were threatened with annihilation because of this. This is true courage, and we need more of it. Today we're looking at Mordecai. He was a man of honor. He was a man of conviction. He was a man of fortitude. In honor is he continued to, even though he was in a strange land and he was in a strange king's land, he continued to respect him. Even when he came in at the gate and the two gatekeepers was going was threatening the king. He told them, they got killed. I mean, he was honored. He didn't just say, well, that serves him right. I'm over here, I'm in bondage, and I'm over here, and I don't like what's going on. So he could have let it go on. But he was still an honorable guy. He was still honored, and he still did what they asked him to do until it come down to the time that he had to go against his God. Now, we live in the United States, which is probably one of the most freest countries in the world. Today, it's not the same as it was 12 months ago. It's not the same as it was 20 years ago. And tomorrow, it's not going to be the same as it is today because it's ever-changing. We have no idea where we're going. We have no idea what's going to happen. But we do know one thing, that God is in control. Mordecai was sitting here, and he didn't know exactly what was going to happen. He didn't know what he was facing, but he knew he wasn't going to compromise. He was going to continue to honor where honor was due, but he wasn't going to compromise his convictions just to please a king and just to please somebody else. Now, as we're looking here, it says that the quality is one of three qualities of courage. That's honor, moral conviction, and fortitude in the face of disaster. No word is used more to describe a true hero than that of honor. Honor is integrity. Honor is morality. Honor is virtue. Honorable men do not compromise. You know, I'm not going to name people in our church or that we're associated with, or people that you know, but there's several men that I have known over the years, and women over the years, that have been courageous, that have been honorable. They may have faced things in life. You may be facing things. You may face things on your job. You may face things with your people, with your family, that you don't agree with. And I may never know what you face, but you're still an honor to go out and be kind and be respectful and go and do your part. You don't have to bow down to them. You can still live a Christian life. To really know exactly what kind of influence your life is around your peers is when one of them gets in trouble and they call you and ask you for your prayer. Right then you realize that your light is shining in their lives. Now you don't have to, I guess it's a personal opinion of mine. It's a personal, everybody's got these little ideas or whatever. But a person that just goes around and tries to tell you how good of a Christian he is or she is and tells you all of this and that and about their Christian life, it just kind of turns me off. Now, a person that will live it before you and will live holy, will live righteous, will treat you the same whether you're in church or whether you're at home or whether you're on the job or whether you're at Walmart's or whether you're pumping gas or whatever, and just let their light shine amongst you and put in a word, a seasoned word when they feel appropriate, and that's more of an influence than anybody that goes out there and tries to boast about what they are. And I think that's what Mordecai was here. He was honorable. He was doing what he was supposed to be doing. He was coming in and out of the gate, but he just wouldn't bow. As you go back and read the whole book of Esther, and you look and you see that the king, he had him and the queen. She wouldn't bow down to him, and she wouldn't do what he wanted, and she wouldn't respect him. And so he set up maidens, and he set up virgins to come in and to find him another queen. And Haman in this time had set up this decree that said that everyone needs to bow down and to worship. And so Haman had set up this and had got the king to sign it and had the people here, and they were coming in and worshiping. And it had been several years now since this had happened, and Esther at this time had found favor. She was a beautiful woman. She had found favor with the king. She was one of the virgins, and she had went through the purification and the 12 months of purification, and she had come in her time with the king, and he liked her more than he did any of the other ones. And so he made her the queen. And so she was the queen at the time, and Mordecai was here, and he was coming, and he was being honorable. But then it come a time when they wanted him to bow down, and he wouldn't bow down. Church, we're in a time and an hour today that it's time for us to stand. It's time for us to stand. I'm not saying you got to go out there on the street corner and say, I'm standing today, but it's when you are asked, stand firm. When you're faced with opposition, stand firm. Stand on your convictions. Stand on your beliefs. Stand on the Bible. Because there is a true church that's going to heaven. Whether it's me or whether it's you or whether it's everybody in this room, there's a true church. And we got to stand for our convictions. It appalls me if you watch the news, and I'm not going to get into it, till we don't get into the place till when you got a picture hanging behind somebody signing something, and you got people standing beside it, till it makes everybody so aggravated until they have to be arrested, and now people are going to boycott the state. Where are we coming to, church? What are we facing? You never know. From day to day, it's just, what are you facing again tomorrow? But don't be fearful. Don't compromise. Don't lose your honor. Let's be courageous in this hour we're facing. Because, I talked to my neighbor across this week. She's be 90 years old in July. She says, I have never in all of my life seen anything like it is right now. So it doesn't matter whether you're 28 or 29. Did I get it right? Excuse me. You'll be 28 in a few days. It don't matter whether you're in your late 20s or whether you're approaching 80 or 85 or however old you are today. We've never seen anything like we're seeing today. And we have no idea what we're going to face. And I'm not here to paint gloom and doom. I'm here to tell you that Mordecai was a courageous man. And just as Mordecai was a courageous man, we can be courageous people in our hour. Be honorable. Do what's right. Do it when it needs to be done. Do not compromise your convictions. If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. That's true. It is the gospel truth. If every little wind that comes by will change you and you'll join up with any crowd that comes by and any whim that comes by, then you'll just float with the wind. You'll be like the, what's that old tumbleweed? It just rolls and rolls and goes, and you never know where it's going to wind up. It ain't stable. It won't hold nothing. It just floats with the wind. It may be here today. It may be yonder next week. But if you'll stand firm. I saw a little tree yesterday. It was a little palm tree. The root was about like this, had one little shoot sticking up. And it was growing over the road. And I walked by, and the first time I didn't see it. I saw the tree, but it didn't register with me. I turned back and come back, Sister Sherry, and I looked over there, and about this high up was two braces on the side, was pointing it up, had a brace across the middle, was holding it upright. Sometimes you may be standing, and it may feel like you can't stand alone, and God may have to come by and just prop you up and hold you up, stand you up for a little while. But no matter what it takes, church, we got to stand tall. You can't afford to lean over. You can't afford to compromise your convictions. Now, I want to talk a little bit more down in here, and I want to, and as Esther and Mordecai, when it got to the point that Mordecai would not bow down, it made Haman mad. To the point that he went to the king. He got a decree from the king that says we're going to kill all the Jews. And it got to the point that at some point in Mordecai, and in chapter 4 and verse 1, it says, when Mordecai perceived all of this was done, Mordecai rent his clothes and put on sackcloth and ashes and went out into the midst of the city and cried with a loud and bitter cry. Now, folks, You've often heard, I've never been in war. I've never been one that fights. I've never been one that just is picking a fight or just is out there looking for something. I was always big enough that I didn't feel like if you messed with me, I probably was too big, couldn't swing too good. I wasn't no one of them little limber things. But you know, there comes a time when enough's enough. Mordecai had gotten enough. They were fixing to kill his people. And what did he do? In the face of fear, in the face of fortitude, he stood up and said, he went out and rent his clothes and got in sackcloth and ashes and got in the streets and went to crying. He cried so much until Esther. If you look at Esther at this time, she had been the queen for about 5 years. So she'd been in the king's house, but she still wasn't in a place that she could just approach the king any day she wanted to. She couldn't just go into him. And so she saw that Mordecai was out here, and he was desperate, and he was in these sackcloths and ashes, and people might have been saying, well, what's he doing? Why is he out there crying? Why is he being so bitter? Why is he doing this in the streets? He was trying to get attention. He was trying to get God's attention, that things wasn't right. And whose attention did he get? He got Esther's attention. And this is what I like. And when Esther came to him, she looked and she wanted him to put on clothes and get out of the street. He didn't do that. And he kept going back to, and finally he said, in verse 13 of chapter 4, said, then Mordecai commanded to answer Esther, think not with thyself that thou shalt escape in the king's house more than all the Jews. He's saying, just because you up there in the king's house, and just because he don't know you a Jew yet, doesn't mean you're going to escape. When he finds out, and when the people finds out you're a Jew, they're going to kill you just like they're going to kill us. And he says, for if thou altogether holdest thy peace at this time, then shall there be enlargement and deliverance arise to the Jews from another place. But thou and thy father's house shall be destroyed, and who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this? I want to read that last little clause there again. And who knoweth whether thou art come to a kingdom for such a time as this? Now, Brother Denver, that stuck out to me because I hear the talks, I hear the memories, and I hear the days of yesteryear of maybe you and Brother Mark and Brother Roger and different ones of what you saw happen, Brother Jerry, and different ones of what you might have seen happen in this church. And I can give you stories of what I saw happen where I grew up. I mean, I can tell you of stories when I've heard y'all talk about when the demon left and went out the tree or the fire or something out the door. I can remember when I was a kid, I wasn't old enough to drive, and I remember Brother Junior was pastoring at a different church, and they had a guy they was needing some help with prayer, and they came over to our church on a Friday night or Saturday night, and they told all the kids to stay home, all the women to stay home, and it was a men's night. And they come for one purpose, to pray the demon out of the man. And he went home a free man. But they didn't want nobody around that was not prayed up and not where they needed to be, because they didn't want him leaving him and going into one that wasn't where he needed to be. So they only wanted strong men to come. I remember that as a kid. And you think back and you live on ashes and memories and all that, and we can't dwell on that. But Brother Brandon, you're at this age, and it says here in verse 14, it says, and who knoweth whether thou art come to a kingdom for such as a time as this? You don't have those things from the 40s and the 50s and the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. You don't have all those years and all those memories. All you have is what's right now. All you have is what you've seen the Lord do in today's time. And what he did back yonder, he'll still do today. And Esther was here, and Mordecai was telling her, Esther, you don't know why you was here. You might have been put here for a time as this. 5 years ago, You was put in and he made you queen. 5 years you've been in his house. It could be setting up that you were setting up for this time. You never know where you're at. You never know what the Lord's wanting you to do for you. You never know where the Lord's wanting to carry you and what path he's wanting to carry you in. But what he wants you to do is to be faithful, to be honorable, to stand your convictions. Not seek the counsel of fear, but seek the counsel of God. And then when he talked to her, he said, then Esther bade them return to Mordecai with this answer. Go gather together all the Jews that are present in Shushan, and fast ye for me, and neither eat nor drink 3 days, night or day. I also and my maidens will fast likewise, and so will I go unto the king, which is not according to the law, and if I perish, I perish. So Mordecai went his way and did according to all that Esther had commanded him. And I know we're talking about a courageous man, and we're talking about Mordecai, but I want to talk to you a little bit about this. Yeah, Mordecai was the one that started the revolution. I'll use that terminology. Mordecai was the one that started. He's the one that got in sackcloth and ashes and started weeping in the street. Esther was the avenue that they were going to use to get to the king. But he told Esther, he said, if you don't go, God's still going to deliver us. Don't get to the point, Christian, that you think, well, if it ain't me, God's not going to move. Because God's going to have a church, and God's going to reach lost souls, whether it be with me or whether it be with you or whoever. He's going to find somebody that's going to that's going to preach his word and is going to reach the lost. And he's telling Esther, he says, Esther, if it's not you, if you don't go, if this doesn't work, somebody else is going to deliver us. But then what did Esther say? Okay, I'm going to go, but I ain't going alone. And that's where I want to encourage every one of y'all, every one of us. You may not be the preacher. You may not be the evangelist. You may not be the one that's actually doing the talking. But what did Esther tell him? He says, I want you for me, fast ye for me, and neither eat nor drink 3 days, night or day. And I also and my maidens will fast likewise, and so I will go in unto the king. What she was telling him, yeah, you may not be on the front line. You may not be right here where I'm at. But if you'll fast with me, and all of y'all will fast with me and pray for me, then I'll go forth. What am I saying, church? You may sit back and the devil will use this. He'll use all kind of tactics to get to you. If he cannot get you to give up on God, he'll get you to be discouraged. Discouragement is one of his biggest tactics. He'll discourage you and say, well, you don't sing specials. Well, you don't like to get up and testify. You don't like to talk in front of people. Well, you're not the one leading the choir, and you're not the one teaching Sunday school, and you're not the one preaching, so you're just no good. So you might as well just sit there and dry up. Has he ever told anybody that? Or has he told you that, well, so-and-so don't like to hear you, so you might as well just not do anything today? Or so-and-so didn't call on you or didn't speak to you, so they must not like you, and so they probably ill with you, and so you just go and it's okay if you go and sit, but just go and sit and don't do anything and don't say anything and just come on back home. But what did Esther say? She says, I'm going, but I want you to do your part too. I want you to fast, and I want you to pray for 3 days that the God will be with me when I go see the king. What happens when you come to revival, when the whole church has fasted and prayed for 3 days before revival? What happens when you come to church? Preacher asked me the other day, different denomination, and it kind of stung me, Brother Mark. It says, what percentage of time do you walk into church looking for a blessing that day? Really think about it. What percentage of time do you show up for church, prayed up, read up, coming looking for a blessing? Looking for the Lord to pour out a blessing on you that day. Did you? And I'm not beating you down. I'm just saying he asked me that, and at first it kind of, I thought, well, 100% of the time I come looking for something. But then he said, prayed up, read up, looking for a blessing. And I thought, there's some mornings this year I come in and I'm like, I run hard all day yesterday and worked hard all day yesterday and come in on Sunday morning and think, Brother Mark's got to preach real good this morning, keep me awake. Did I really come in looking for a blessing that day? Brother Dimple, and I know I have seen you, so I know there's times when you, and I've done it too. I mean, I'm not just singling that. There's times when I walked in the door and it felt like there was something inside of me that was churning, that you was just waiting, can I testify, or if it gives me opportunity, or I just want to stand up and rejoice, and I want to just thank the Lord for what he's doing, what he's feeling in my soul, and what he's making me, what I'm feeling today. I'm just coming looking for a blessing. There's a difference, church. There's a difference. But we ought to be looking on more occasions than just coming because it's a duty. Just coming because it's Sunday morning and we're coming to church because we ain't got nowhere else to go. This crowd here this morning is not like that. I realize that. And I know this is going out on the air. But there's a difference of how you come to worship. It's the difference when you go to work in the mornings, whether you go to work all energetic, ready to go, speaking to everybody, or you go in saying, Lord, if I can get behind that desk, I can rest for the next hour, and then maybe I can get something done. But Esther said, I'm going before the king, but I'm not going alone. I want you to pray. I want you to fast. I want you to ask for his blessings. And what happened? When he got there, she got in, he extended his scepter to her, and she was blessed. She found out he offered her everything up to half the kingdom. Next thing you knew, Haman, that was going to kill all the Jews and kill Mordecai, had actually made a noose to kill him, a gallows, and he was actually hung and killed in that one, and all of his 10 sons. So you never know where you're at. So what I want to tell you this morning, remind you this morning, be honorable. Be honorable. Do what's right. Obey the laws. Don't be a renegade. We got to obey the laws of the land. I mean, just because sometimes I may pass a state trooper running 70 miles an hour in a 55, and I look down and say, ooh, let me slow down. We try to obey the laws of the land. But at the same time, obey your convictions. Just because John does it, or Mary does it, or whoever else does it, or just because somebody asks you to do it, stand for what you believe in, church. Stand for what's right. Stand for what's in the book. And then the last thing is when you're facing the darkest hours that we're facing, don't let fear take over. Don't be fearful. Don't be fearful of what you're going to face. The devil always has used it for years. I work for the federal government. Everybody knows that. And I've often thought, Brother Mark, we've had to be on direct deposit for years. And the thing that the devil always pops in my mind is, what you going to do when the mark comes? And you can sit there and dwell on it and think, well, everything's going to be a cashless society and blah, 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 and everything, whatever you want to do. You can sit there and dwell on it and get so discouraged and so wrapped up and so despondent until that other person over on the shoulder steps up and says, I'll take care of you. Put your faith in God. No matter what you're facing, put your faith in God. Don't be fearful. Don't be fearful, church. You never know what you're going to face. But by God's grace, we can make it. Brother Denville's family sings a song. They sung it several years ago on their tape. And And I don't remember all the words to it, but the chorus says, I've made it by grace. And when we get to heaven, church, we're going to be made it by grace. It's not going to be by our own actions. It's not going to be our own ways. Every one of our crosses is going to be different. Everything that you face in life is going to be different. Some of you have faced being alone, being a widow, or being a widower. Others of you have faced other hardships. Everybody's got a different cross to bear. But by God's grace, we can make it. By God's grace, we will make it if we'll stay with Him. We're living in 2021. I am looking for a blessing. I am looking for God to move in miraculous ways. I am looking for more and more miracles. We had a lady stand up Wednesday night and testified about a miracle in her life. You know, everybody wants to see somebody raised from the dead and walk up. You know, you walk up to the casket and that person stands up out of the casket and walks out the door. Everybody wants to see that as a miracle. But God moves in all other kind of miracles. I think about David often when he went before Goliath and he started down through there and they put all that armor on him and put all this stuff on him and put all the big suit to go down there and fight. And he said, "No, y'all just put that off. I'm going with what I know. I'm going with God. He doesn't help me with the lion and the bear, and I'm going to face him with me and God." And folks, when you start trusting God in the little things, in the little daily walks in life, and He works with you in the daily walks of life, and when you get saved and you start trusting God and leaning on God and praying to God and looking for answers, and He starts blessing you, when He starts blessing in the little things, when it gets to the bigger things, you've done build up your trust, and you say, "Yes, Lord, I know you can." Because you done tried Him through the little things. Our illustrations this morning. Some years ago, Premier Khrushchev was speaking before the Supreme Soviet and was severely critical of the late Premier Stalin. While he was speaking, someone from the audience sent up a note. "What are you doing with Stalin's committed all those atrocities?" Khrushchev shouted, "Who sent this note?" Not a person stirred. "I'll give him another minute to stand up." The seconds ticked off. Still no one moved. "All right, I'll tell you what I was doing. I was doing exactly what the writer of this note was doing. Exactly nothing. I was afraid to be counted." Sometimes, folks, we just are afraid to be counted. But I'd like to encourage you this morning, let's be counted as God's Christian, as a child of God, as a Bible believer, holy person, living for God. I think General George Patton in Sicily, during World War II, they asked him about facing battles, and he said, "I've never been with the sound of a gunshot or in the sight of a battle in my whole life that I wasn't so scared that I had sweat in my palms of my hands." Just because you turn out to be great, just because when life, at the end, you look back and you see how God's blessed you and how God's worked with you, didn't mean that in those battles that you wasn't sweating a little bit, that you wasn't just wondering. Folks, I'm not going to stand up and tell you that, you know, every time you walk up to a battle, He's just going to open the Red Sea and walk across on the dry land. Because if you remember the Israelites, when they got to the Red Sea, He didn't part 100 miles out. He didn't part 5 miles out. He didn't part till they stepped in the water. Sometimes we want it all to be lined out and we know how it's going and we know what's going to happen a long time before we ever get there. But God don't always work like that. Sometimes He don't move until you really just step your foot in the water. You still trusting him. You still know he's going to do it some way. But he may not move until you actually put your foot and say, yes, Lord. Like she said, whether I perish or whether I live, I'm going for it. Church, whether you perish or whether you live, if you're a child of God, you're going to be a winner either way. So let's be encouraged this morning. Let's seek courage. Let's be honorable. And let's charge ahead. How much longer I got, Brother Landon? A few more minutes. Anybody got a testimony this morning you want to add to it?